The movement for federally legal marijuana is often oversimplified as cries from recreational marijuana users for the indoctrination of cannabis as a lawful and normalized drug, comparable to current attitudes towards alcohol. However, there is a longer history to this issue than is largely perceived, and the question of marijuana permissibility may be more complicated than you think. With the introduction of new measures in some states to decriminalize the possession and usage of hard drugs such as cocaine, heroin, and psychedelics, there is a widening divide between the states pushing in a more progressive direction and the ones entrenched in legislature that reflect some more traditional values of the past 100 years, making this controversy exceedingly relevant. Some important questions to consider while examining this topic are: what were the true reasons for making cannabis products illegal? To what extent has legislation criminalizing marijuana usage had a negative impact on the citizens of the United States, and are those effects intentional? First, some clarification about terminology. Marijuana, more commonly referred to as weed, is a psychoactive or mind-altering drug commonly used for either medicinal benefits or recreational euphoria. It goes by many pseudonyms, but for the purpose of this video, cannabis and marijuana can be used interchangeably to describe debates over cannabis products. As of May 2022, marijuana is illegal on a federal level in the United States, although 18 states have declared recreational use legal and 36 medicinal within their boundaries. This disparity between federal and state law has caused a rise in discourse surrounding what the next legislative steps should be, if any. Let's take a look at the history of marijuana in the United States. Anglo-Americans have been aware of marijuana's medicinal properties since the early 1800s, and by the end of the 19th century, Americans were able to buy cannabis extracts from pharmacies and doctors to aid stomach aches, headaches, inflammation, and insomnia. Modern evidence backs up marijuana's ability to control pain and help manage symptoms of other medical conditions. The drug also became popular in Mexico during the 19th century, and Mexican immigrants brought it into the United States with them, particularly into the early 1900s during a large Mexican immigration boom brought on by the Mexican Revolution and a strong American economy. This is when American resistance to the legal existence of marijuana surged. Marijuana quickly became a tool for many nativists, particularly Southern Americans, to retaliate against this immigration swell. They painted both marijuana and Mexicans as dangerous to American citizens, and sweeping protest and legislation to regulate the substance ensued. The federal government first regulated marijuana in 1937 with the Marijuana Tax Act, effectively outlawing the possession and sale of marijuana. Later on, the Boggs Act of 1952 provided stiff mandatory sentences for offenses involving cannabis, among other drugs. In 1970, Congress passed the Controlled Substances Act, categorizing drugs based on their perceived medical usefulness and potential for abuse. Nixon, amidst his war on drugs and animosity towards the counterculture that he associated marijuana with, placed marijuana in Schedule I, the most restrictive category. This made it difficult for doctors and scientists to obtain marijuana for research studies and medical use, and today it remains categorized in Schedule I, counterintuitive to what many scientists and medical professionals have to say on the matter. The United States has a long history of using drug laws to target ethnic communities. For example, aforementioned anti-cannabis laws were created against Mexican Americans and immigrants in the early 1900s, and the war on drugs was designed to target African Americans in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. John Ehrlichman, President Nixon's domestic policy advisor, directly admitted this in a later interview conducted by Dan Baum by stating, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." While these policies hindered the progress of marijuana legalization, many people and organizations have been working for a long time to make cannabis legal. One famous activist is Dana Beal, who is a longtime member and leader of the Youth International Party, or the Yippies. He has helped to organize hundreds of smoke-ins, marches, parades, and other events in New York City, and has also been arrested numerous times on marijuana-related charges. There has been some conflict between activists such as Beal and organizations like NORML, whose mission is to move public opinion sufficiently to legalize the responsible use of marijuana by adults and to serve as an advocate for consumers to assure that they have access to high-quality marijuana that is safe, convenient, and affordable. Beal describes them as a little more buttoned down and into lobbying and convincing Congress to change the laws, as opposed to his methods of protest. The effects of marijuana being an illegal substance are particularly devastating to minority communities. Although the use of marijuana is roughly the same among black and white people, black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested on a marijuana-related charge. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and almost half of all offenders are serving time for drug-related offenses. Half of these drug arrests are for marijuana, and 92% of those arrests are just for possession. The number of people arrested for non-violent cannabis offenses is more than for all the violent crimes combined. Incarceration for marijuana-related charges also has negative effects even after offenders are released. Having a marijuana conviction on your record can complicate obtaining and maintaining employment, housing, and government assistance for the rest of your life. It can also lead to disenfranchisement, which strategically decreases the political power of minorities in America. In the 1960s and 70s, a counterculture emerged that became known for opposing war and rebelling against traditional American values of morality. Along with this movement, many white upper-class college students began to use marijuana recreationally, and the harsh punishments that were designed to hinder Black and Latino Americans began to affect these more privileged populations. At this point, legality became a much more interesting topic to state politicians, and many states began to soften marijuana-related penalties. Eventually, Colorado became the first state to approve an initiative legalizing the recreational sale and use of cannabis in 2012, and 17 other states followed suit. The federal government, however, has not yet taken the step to legalize the substance. A potential reason for this could be that legal marijuana businesses are currently often forced to pay twice as much as other businesses in federal taxes because of the discrepancy between federal and state law. This brings in revenue for the government that they do not want to lose. According to the Washington Post, ending marijuana prohibition would save about $35 billion in annual nationwide taxes. This explains why many politicians, particularly fiscal conservatives, are unlikely to support marijuana legalization anytime soon. Additionally, Republicans are not motivated to decriminalize or legalize marijuana because they benefit from disenfranchising Black Americans that are much more likely to vote Democrat. Today, many activists continue to advocate for legalization on the federal level. On the other hand, there are also many protesters that are against having marijuana use in stores in their communities. This remains a controversial issue that is present in political debates and on the streets. It is clear, however, that the motivations for making marijuana illegal are targeted towards certain ethnic communities and disproportionately harm them. It is time the government takes accountability for the true causes and effects of marijuana prohibition and takes necessary action to resolve those issues.